Please join me in welcoming Hanif Willis-Abdurraqib.
Wow. What a time to be alive, right? This is incredible. Thank you, Will and Darren and all the student perspectives. That was really great and tough to follow, surely. But I'm thrilled to be here. Congratulations and good afternoon to graduates, students, alumni, faculty, parents and siblings, and like any tourists who might have wandered in from like Main Street. There was a dude, I was in Rite Aid earlier this morning, and a dude was like, you're giving the commencement address, right? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, I'll be there. And I was like, are you graduating or do you know someone? And he was just like, nah. So if that person is in the room, like shout out to you as well. Also, perhaps most importantly, greetings and congratulations to all the very good dogs that are here. Like, what an honor to like, I can't wait to pet all of you. There was one that like scampered in front of the stage at the beginning, and I was just like, oh, I want to run after it. So I think all the time about the generosity of really small joys, right? I think oftentimes we think about joy as this massive, these like brief but massive things, and I think about the small ones that I am often afforded and how they create this kind of tapestry, something to kind of throw around ourselves when the world becomes too much. And I want to say that being here is a really a joy that I'm going to hold close to me for a long time, and I'm thrilled to share this weekend with all of you, and it feels very unreal for me, so thank you. So I played basketball against LeBron James exactly one time. In a high school gym, I stood opposite of the great LeBron James, both of us at that time high school seniors. He's from Akron, Ohio, for those who don't know. He was just like, and I think like it's hard to touch now because he's like LeBron James. But when he was in high school, he was just like this like Ohio legend, not necessarily a world legend yet, but we'd all heard about him. And I was not that. I was 5'6", and not very good. But I was like trying to stay in shape during a soccer off season, so basketball it was. There's some people who would say that in sport or art or even in a classroom, we all have the tools to level certain playing fields, but I imagine anyone who would say that is probably not extremely good at anything. But I played basketball against LeBron James one time, and after a missed three-pointer, someone tipped the ball out to him as he was sprinting down the court with a head full of steam, my body the only thing between him and the rim, my teammates encouraging me to cut him off in an attempt to draw an offensive foul, even after a year of my watching him add to his highlight reel at the expense of smaller and weaker players, which I was. Still, I rooted myself to the floor just above the foul line, LeBron James barreling down on me. As he prepared to jump, seemingly over my head, my high school life flashed before my eyes and the future that was possible after it. I made a brief value judgment and slid out of his way. He then dunked and hung on the rim and smirked at me on the way back down court. Now, because I am a writer, full of all the literary tricks and devices that writers saddle themselves with in these particular situations in the hopes that for about 20 minutes we can keep your attention, even though an entire world is opening its arms to you when this is done, you know that I will, of course, come back to the LeBron James story and my decision to move. But I also come to you today thinking a lot about the work of the critic, which is, in a lot of ways, my life's work, perhaps unfortunately. And I think a lot about the work of the critic, and specifically the work of the music critic, which was once to point people in the direction of taste, to set tone and pace to the music world through reviews that were seen as authoritative and necessary for the life of an album. Artists would tear open magazines in search of what was written about their work, and as a child, I would put cassette tapes into my Sony Walkman, which is dating myself, but A Walkman is a thing that played tapes, cassette tapes. You would put the tape in and it would have buttons. And sometimes the tape would get caught and you would have to like take out the tape and like with your finger, wind it backwards. Also, I should point out that I didn't have a Walkman because I was that old. It's just that my family was poor and we couldn't afford a Sony Discman, which is also a relic. But I would scrawl notes on albums I loved before waiting eagerly for a magazine to read what my favorite critic would say about the album. And now, for better and certainly for worse at times, everyone has access to a Twitter account and an opinion. And I can know the full narrative cycle of an album by scrolling through my phone an hour after its release. And so it dawns on me now that the work of the critic is perhaps to be wrong. And not just to be wrong, but to find comfort in being wrong. I said this yesterday during a thing I read, but I was never more wrong than I was in 2016 about everything. A year that, for some, seemed like a litany of things that couldn't get worse until they did. The fire that kept spreading no matter how many hoses were taken to it. And I think there is virtue in that which shakes you from your foundation of imagined righteousness and causes you to see being wrong as a gift. And understand that I am not talking about the kind of wrong that rejects science, or the kind of wrong that further marginalizes the already marginalized, or the kind of wrong that adds a new violence to the wellspring of active violences. Not violences. I am talking about a certainty, a faith in the idea that there is no shakable idea. So at the end of every week now, anytime I write about music, I go to my email. And in my email, there's at least one email, but sometimes several, from people telling me how wrong I am about this thing they like. Because that's just a thing that happens. I write about pop music, and people are like, I love pop music, and I can't believe you said this thing about pop music. And I hit a point this year where I've taken to writing all those people back. And I asked them to tell me what I might be missing. I asked them to lend me their eyes for a brief moment and tell me what they see that I am not seeing. And the point, I think, is that in a time where every incorrect thing is a public one, something that lives beyond ourselves and often on the internet, a mistake is a revolutionary act if you can learn from it. And I value that. As someone who talks about things I love for a living, sometimes in front of several people like today, I want for myself and for all of us to look at every mistake as another brick in a lighthouse that will, if we are lucky, pull us closer to a newer and cleaner version of ourselves. This part is specifically for the graduates, but I guess everyone else can listen to. Are you all just in this section? Cool. So this is for you, but everyone else is hanging out. This is also kind of for you, but it's mostly, it's for you. But yeah, cool. So I get what it is to be told that you're wrong more often than you get to be told that you're right. I'm in an interesting spot today, and I thought about this a lot leading up to this point. Like, I'm older than you, obviously, yeah, but I'm still young enough to be told that my purchases are foolish and my vision for the future isn't sustainable. So I get it in a way. We're all millennials, although I'm of the music television brand of millennial who goes to bed at 10 p.m. And you're like the YouTube brand of millennial who keeps me up past my aspired bedtime with your loud music and revelry. Which, this is a complete aside. There was a thing that came out. There was a thing that came out today, or in a business thing that was like, millennials are killing restaurants like Applebee's and Buffalo Wild Wings. And I was like, am I supposed to feel bad for Applebee's? Finally, someone's done it. If anyone here enjoys Applebee's or works at Applebee's, I'm sorry. It was like, what? Applebee's is not like this is delicious, you know what I'm saying? It's not like millennials are killing cupcakes. Literally, millennials are killing a chain restaurant where you can get 2 for $20 dinners, you know what I'm saying? We'll be all right. Sorry. I think the point I'm getting at is that it is truly something to be old enough to know better when the people older than you insist that you are not old enough to know better. At a protest in my hometown of Columbus last year, I walked with a mass of people flooding into the downtown, heading towards the State House. It was a hot day, saturated with the kind of Midwest humidity that arrives hours, sometimes days before a storm and sits heavy in the air over your head. The protesters, many of us 30 or older, were drenched in sweat, slowing our pace. Some turned to go home. Two young teenagers armed with megaphones sprinted to the front of the protest line and led the group in chants. Another group of teenagers draped the arms of the weary around their shoulders. Some others handed out water. Others steered the group clear of police barricades. One particularly enthusiastic teenager ambled up next to me and asked why I was slowing down. When I remarked that we'd been marching for nearly an hour, and it didn't seem like we were getting any closer to the end, he looked at my two working legs, looked back up at me and said, "We'll get there together. You already have everything you need." The simple thing to say here is that maybe Whitney Houston was right all along, and it will be a child to lead us out of the deluge of misery. But the interior of that moment reminded me of a small thing I'd long forgotten: the need to look backwards for answers. When you give up on the idea of your tenure on this spinning rock as an indicator of the best way to navigate it, the answers for survival seem clearer, and I am enthusiastic today because it is yet another reminder of the brilliance of thinkers, writers, artists, and environmentalists who are younger than I am, who can see the world differently than I do, who can do it with perhaps less cynicism, who can briefly lend me their eyes and show me what they are seeing, who can take my hand and carry me to the water when I need to look out on something vast and briefly beautiful. So with any luck, well, I guess this holds up. With any luck, we're all going to be older tomorrow than we were today, and the next day, and the year after that. And I hope for all of us that we can take what we learn in our aging and still be hungry to sit at the feet of someone younger than us to learn more. I'm nothing without an entire lineage of elders, of course, and I don't want to discourage any parents or grandparents in the room and be like, "You've done enough." But also, this is like a call for you all to take some time off, you know what I mean? You've certainly earned it. Everyone was like, people have come from all over, people have come from other countries, and I'm like, wow. I went to a college in Columbus that was 2 blocks from my dad's house, so, he wouldn't have had to come from another country, but thank you to all those who did. I'm energized whenever I can stand in community with a generation and see the people who will lead and encourage for years to come, and I want to tell you that you should know when it is also time for you to be led and to be encouraged. Sometimes you let yourself be carried in the way you have carried others. Sometimes, when there is greatness barreling down on you with a full head of steam, you step out of the way and admire it and just tell yourself you're happy to be there. 2 stories, both short. In January of 1986, the temperature in South Florida unexpectedly dropped to 20 degrees overnight. This would have been an unexpected and unspectacular flash of weather if not for an O-ring attached to the Challenger space shuttle. The rings were designed to keep pressurized hydrogen out of the rocket boosters, and because the shuttle was launching from Florida, engineers stopped short of testing it below 40 degrees to see if the O-rings would function in cold weather, because Florida, right? The O-ring, as it turned out, stopped functioning at any temperature below 30. So the Challenger, 73 seconds into its flight, converted itself into a bomb, killing everyone on board. Now, if Florida doesn't have a record low morning, or if an engineer decides, let me just take this 10 degrees lower, the Challenger is a success story instead of a tragedy. New York City, July 13th, 1977. Lightning strikes an electrical substation on the Hudson River, tripping 2 circuit breakers in Buchanan, New York, throwing the breaker open and causing it to lose power. The reason the breaker was thrown open and able to close and let the power flow again was because 3 days earlier, during a routine inspection, an electric company employee forgot to retighten the locking nut. As a result of this, transmission lines went down, pushing major working transmission lines to be overloaded and lose power. Normally, at least in this era, an electric company employee, in order to save power to remaining customers, would have to shed some of the electric load to lighten the burden on the lines and even everything out. But on this day, during a hot summer in a city wrecked by both a financial crisis and the Son of Sam killings, No one was on hand. The Con Edison employee, perhaps the same one who forgot to tighten the locking nut, took the day off to spend time with his pregnant wife. With no one to lighten the electrical load, a chain reaction took out power in the entire city, causing the New York City blackout of 1977. So, when the power went out, a young DJ named Curtis Fisher was spinning records with his partner in a park. He had made small name for himself around the city, spinning parties like other DJs in the Bronx, but not having the adequate resources to go beyond that and take the next step, which would be recording beats and the tracks he was spinning. It seemed, before that day, that he and all the city's other DJs had reached their peak, spinning a few records here and there for gas money to get to the next party. But when the power went out in the park, Curtis Fisher assumed his turntable had broken. Preparing to pack it up, he looked around. He noticed the city's darkness and the frantic energy that surrounded it. People were breaking into stores, looting what they could to survive a year that saw many of them losing work and fearing for their lives. And so Curtis Fisher, better known as Grandmaster Caz, forefather of hip-hop, calmly walked into a store, got a new turntable, and more importantly, a mixer, vital to recording. And months later, the city cooled and the lights came back on, and hip-hop as we know it was born. DJs in the Bronx emerged from the blackout with newfound and, to be fair, ill-acquired, but needed, recording equipment, and a place to archive the rhymes their friends were spitting in the parks. And so if an electric company employee tightens a locking nut a few extra spins, or if another electric company employee chose the endless pursuit of labor over a small and needed pursuit of love, it is possible that disco never dies. And it is possible that rap music is a fad that never finds its way out of New York City parks. And friends, I am telling you all of this to let you know that none of you, not a single one of you, is insignificant in the machinery of this world. Your mere living in it is accelerating it in a direction. Last night I got to this part of the speech where I'd written this thing about how I wanted all of you to change the world because that's the kind of thing people say at college graduations. And it seemed adequate. But it also seemed hollow and insincere. And if I'm being honest today, in the face of a world that is no longer the world of my imagined childhood innocence, if I'm being honest today in the face of a world that has grown unbearable teeth, if I'm being honest today in the face of a world that doesn't always love me back, I want to not burden you with platitudes about how you are the ones who will do the work. I want, instead, for you to do the work of living in it the best way you can. These are times where living well some days is moving the needle. I want for you to make the world better by building your own world and making that better each and every day you can. I want for you to know that there is more to the world than what it asks us to endure or survive. There are days that require activism and action, of course, but there are days that require Netflix and a couch, and I want for all of us to be able to celebrate both of those in equal measure. Grief and fear and anger are all things that are certainly promised. And so, of course, run fiercely into the joy that is fleeting. Run fiercely into the passion that your body might take from you as you age or find new things or, become less passionate and more cynical. Make a border around the things you love and love them well. We are really minute in the vast and swallowing universe, but to someone, probably someone in this room, we are endless. To our families, to our partners, to our children, we are endless. And yet, we have nothing to claim for ourselves here on earth but a brief and bright collection of hours. That is all we have. And when it is done, and there's no turning back. And at the end of every week, I want you to remember to be grateful for all that you've survived, to look in the mirror and say, these are the things that kept me alive this time. These are the things that kept me alive this time. These are the things that kept me alive this time. I'm going to end on something that Lester Bangs once wrote. Bangs is a hero of mine, the music critic who informed me to talk about music as though it was a living, breathing entity and not just something we listen to as a disposable thing. And I also want to say here that I hope that you all, and this is for everyone in the room, not just the graduates, I think, I hope that you all have found or can find your people. And by that I mean the people you can talk to about stuff you love I really want to stress that nothing you love is insignificant. If you take to the things you love in the same spirit that you take to the people you love, then you are living a fulfilling life. And I really want to stress that. So often, because the world is oftentimes crumbling and feels like it's falling apart, we're told that our small freedoms are insignificant. We're told that binging a TV show is bad, or eating 2 things of ice cream in a day is bad. None of that is insignificant. Nothing that brings you joy, that you love, that is keeping you here. And I say this very off script, and I apologize. But as someone who has had friends who haven't survived hard times because they felt that the things that were keeping them alive were not important, I am telling you, everything you love that keeps you here a little bit longer, none of that is insignificant. It is all important. And so find the people who don't dismiss the things you love as stupid, even if they are like pop songs and ice cream. The people who perhaps in a diner after midnight make you laugh, the kind of laugh that fights its way out of your body through a series of trembles. Maybe you met those people here in Bar Harbor, or maybe they're back home, wherever home is for you. But I hope that you find them, and I hope that they're with you always. So Lester Bangs wrote this line. This isn't planned, but this is a line in the same essay that I cited yesterday when I read a brief thing. The line is, "The only questions worth asking today are whether humans are going to have any emotions tomorrow, and what the quality of life will be if the answer is no." And with that, I hope that we are always unafraid to be vulnerable with each other, perhaps especially when the stakes are high. I hope that we are open to both giving and receiving vulnerability. There is no class for empathy, unless there is one here. I guess I should have fact-checked that before I... No? Okay. I didn't know if there'd be like someone in the front row like, actually, I have a master's degree in empathy. How dare you? How dare you insult my decades of hard work? There is no class for empathy. It isn't something, it's funny that the next line is, it isn't something you can get a piece of paper telling you that you mastered. I'm sorry to the master's degree in empathy. It grows within like a big laugh and fights its way out when you most need it. Nurture that. Nurture your empathy. Nurture your ability to see other people as whole people with loves and full lives. And like Lester Bangs, I worry about a world in which we are led by things other than our ability to desire and care for each other. And so, as you walk free today into the next chapter, I am of the hope that there is a small home you've built somewhere within yourself that you can turn back to and remember all the things you learned here. Not just in the classroom, but also what you learned about the human condition. Life is impossible, right? I think just generally, the idea that so much survival depends on so many impossible things, and so many things that are keeping us alive are just impossible to consider. And so I'm wondering now, and always, if saving the world is simply making life a little less impossible for someone who is not us when we can. Friends, I am wishing you whatever comes after luck. I am wishing you whatever is beyond the moon and the stars. I am wishing you a small and brilliant world and all the hours you want to live inside of it. Mostly, I am wishing you of an eternity of feeling everything good you feel in this moment. I am honored to be here. I am honored to be your peer and stand by you walking towards whatever is next. We will get there together. You already have everything you need. Thank you.